Don Ruggles, welcome to the Neuroarchitect.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. You're doing remarkable things in this space, Maria. Thanks for all of the leadership you're providing. It's really remarkable.
Thank you. Let's start with your story.
Well, there was an ethos in the office about how to create something that really nurtured a sense of health and well-being. This was back in 2007 and 8, 2009. So I started to understand some of the scientific ideas that were coming out of neuroscience and realized that it was significantly impactful for architecture, how architecture and the built environment can affect our health and well-being. Once you start to understand that there are ramifications to what we design and it affects our health, primarily our autonomic nervous system, it's a remarkable paradigm shifter. It changes your whole focus about how you approach a design, how you present it to the clients, and what you're doing for your clients. And it's just, really quite fascinating once you understand what the logic and the reasoning is underneath scientific discourse. And it affects architecture. So I'm also trained as a musician. So a piano player. So I spent my youth looking at musical scores. Well, a musical score is one of the most beautiful graphic systems ever devised by man. And that was absorbed. That rhythmic, ordered, mathematic beauty that comes from, famous composers was imprinted neurologically. And it really informed my design work over the years. So looking at architecture through those lenses, science, and then more on the music side, well, science tends to be more prefrontal cortex, top-down processing. And music, of course, is bottom-up processing. That's emotional processing. And when you realize the impact of the collision of those two neurological processes, well, that's where the magic happens. And that's where we can dive in and create something that really is meaningful for the people that are going to inhabit or even observe the architecture that you're creating.
I also studied piano and bel canto, and I can relate to what you're saying. Science found that music and architecture are very related. When
I
you design a space, it changes the way you want to speak, it changes your voice tone automatically, like without you being aware of it. It changes your preferences for language, your taste of music. So
oh,
definitely they are both related, and science completes this discovery. And music is related to math. It's not like art is on a side and math or science on another side, because composing music and the technique you use is related to science.
it's pretty amazing, isn't it? I tell people frequently, once you start looking at neuroscience and how it affects your biology, the built environment, how it affects your biology, once you fall down that rabbit hole, you're not coming out. I have hundreds of books here in my library that I've, consumed over the past 20 years, all on that subject.
When you say beauty is a vital component of architecture, what do you mean precisely? And what do you think is the misconception about it?
Well, let's start with the misconception first. And it's a misconception that really came out of after World War One. Then it would carried over to post World War II, that beauty was pushed aside because it was deemed not important to the equation of rebuilding the destroyed environment in Europe primarily. And the focus was on this idea that beauty was in the eye of the beholder, that
Mm.
everybody decided on their own what's beautiful. And beauty is actually an emotional response, so it happens subliminally. So, pleasure and survival are the two fundamental emotions that humankind process all day, every day. Almost 11 million bits of information per second we're processing through our subliminal nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. The emotions eventually are passed on. Emotions happen in the ancient brain, if you will, in the midbrain. but there are only selected inputs that are passed on to the modern brain. 50 out of the 11 million bits per second, 50, and that's it, per second to the modern brain. What I know are the feelings that come up, which are these selected bits of information. So, we have to pay attention to what those feelings are that our brain says, well, you need to pay attention to this. Every building you walk by, your subliminal nervous system is telling you, approach, avoid, approach, avoid. It's game changing for architects and interior designers and planners. The more we can dive into this and look at it, the better we're going to be as a society, as humankind.
You mentioned World War One, and you mentioned how they changed, the perspective toward architecture and the goal of it. This is very important to remember, especially for cities that are now in a state of war or in a state of post-disaster, because cities that have lived war maybe 20 or 30 years ago did the same mistake building, not rebuilding, even building in a way that doesn't match the identity of the city, doesn't match the inhabitants, and doesn't even match the human nature. It's not anymore for pleasure, which is for motivation. People need to feel secure and need to feel this motivation to keep on developing and not staying in a static state of survival. And also, this is important to think about because we need to have numbers that confirm that our unconscious might be different from what we're saying in our conscious or what we're thinking. Maybe it's like a cultural thing or a social thing, not to mention some emotions and how we're feeling in a place. Whereas it's like this place doesn't match us anymore.
Well, you've touched on the central component here. So biometrics help measure our subliminal nervous system response, and they're developing ways to do that. We're starting to develop ways to understand and how the autonomic nervous system is responding to the built environment. Well, what you're saying is I don't quite understand what I'm looking at because it's a pattern that's unique to my neurological processing. And pattern recognition is the basis for how neurologists see, the processing that occurs in our brain. Bilateral symmetry is the facial pattern. So the client's literally looking in the mirror at the drawing. Think of the drawing as a mirror, and they see a reflection of their face, which is pleasure, rest, and relaxation. Their brain knows how to process it. I can't tell you how many times it's happened. It over and over and over. And of course, you reinforce that bilateral symmetry idea over and over in the house, the way you place the paintings, the fireplace, the front door, it's just periodic reinforcement of bilateral symmetry.
You mentioned the eye tracking, and we know that there are also different ways of quantifying the relationship between what we're living in a place and the design. For example, emotional facial expressions, with the Dr. Alexandros Lavdas, the
Oh,
voice tone, the heartbeat, the electricity, the conductance of the skin. We have so many ways. So it's not only for people who might think, okay, eye tracking is what you're looking at. So maybe it's not something that you like. So this helps you understand also why you're looking at what you're looking at.
exactly. Could be that you're fearful of it, and that's why you looked at it first. So looking pre-attentive focus is not necessarily pleasure, but it might be. But if you've had that instantaneous focus and your heart rate doesn't elevate and your galvanic skin response doesn't elevate, then likely you are in rest and relaxation and you're looking at a pleasure response. However, if what you look at, the combination is, as you mentioned, heart rate elevate, galvanic skin rate elevates, and you're focused, then you may be having a survival avoidance reaction.
There are some cities some old historic cities that have changed due to war, for example, or a disaster. And its construction changed its identity. But people, because they have inherited narratives related to this place, they will tell you that they like it. Even if, as humans, if we look at it and we don't know the context, we don't know the narrative, we will not like it. They will say something that doesn't align with the nature, but then how will you tell them that this doesn't help you as a human? So maybe the narrative will win at some point, but then we have the quantified results. This is quite challenging in a city and to raise awareness about this topic.
So our nervous system is in balance called homeostasis when survival and pleasure inputs are aligned, one isn't dominating the other. However, our nervous system is more on alert than it is looking for pleasure. It's about an 80-20 ratio. So 80% in relaxation, pleasure, versus 20 of excitement, uniqueness, stress, survival. When you're in that range of 80-20, then you're in homeostasis. And that's a point where humankind feels good. It's more of a rest and relaxation state. So you're getting the overall sense that okay, this 80% roughly feels good and I'm okay. And there's this 20% that's unique. Now, that 20% is actually really important to humankind because stress makes us stronger and pleasure mitigates the negative components of stress. Those are words that are telling me I'm having an adrenalized response to what I'm looking at. Well, that's totally the wrong way to go for humankind because an adrenalized response elevates your heart rate and your blood pressure and causes inflammation, and then a whole cascading set of things that happen after that is catastrophic. So, I watched these competitions happen worldwide and I just thought, oh, for heaven's sakes, they are so far off the rails that I can't even believe it. So I know that this notion of an adrenalized response is pretty pretty powerful for architects. You can walk into a space and go, "This is incredible. I've never seen anything like it. This is interesting and unique." And and you literally your heart rate's up. Well, that's not where you want to be long term. It's okay short term, but long term, if you're going to live in there. You do not want to live in an elevated heart rate, elevated blood pressure,
Mhm.
etc. space.
Exactly. This is what Palasma calls the instant eye gratification. We don't want that. It's just like it's like an event. We just go to an event and then we continue our life the next day normally. We cannot stay in the event. We cannot stay in the party all the time.
Oh, it's beautifully said. Beautiful. Wow, great. The modernist approach to office design has been pretty stark and redacted, where all the details gone, the colors are muted, the lighting's bad. And it's not a tactile environment. There's no natural materials. I mean, it's the whole kind of cascading list of things that are firing our autonomic sympathetic nervous system.
Which means, in simple words, that literally makes you ill, physically ill,
Yes.
and mentally drained. What's one message or a piece of advice you would love to leave with the audience?
There's nothing more important than improving the health and well-being of your clients. And I think once you open yourself to that information, and trust me, there is more information out there than you can believe, coming from science and now from scientists, architects, many like you, Maria. It's remarkable. So make yourself available because it's a game changer.
Don, thank you so much for this interesting conversation.
And it was a lot of fun. You're a remarkable person. We are so lucky to have you as part of our community. So
Thank you.
thank you.
And thanks for watching us.